Hello and welcome to The World This Morning, your gateway to the most urgent shifts on the global stage, the most controversial decisions by world leaders, and the geopolitical signals shaping our collective future. From the tense U.S. China negotiations, Trump's tariff shockwaves, to NATO's military awakening in the face of looming global conflict, all are converging into a volatile, high-stakes world map. Let's take a look at the top stories defining today's agenda. After a period of calm, the tariff storm returns. The familiar instigator, Donald Trump. This time, it is the steel industries of South Korea and Vietnam bearing the brunt of his aggressive new reciprocal trade measures. Once seen as Trump's close ally, Elon Musk is now urging American voters to punish lawmakers supporting the president's budget bill, which he calls a betrayal of the people. The world watches closely as this once powerful duo breaks ranks. A veteran political advisor has issued a shocking warning. Donald Trump may not complete his term due to signs of cognitive decline. Is there truth behind the claim, and how might it shake up American politics? A high-stakes call between Washington and Beijing aimed to ease trade tensions, but unexpectedly Europe steps in, bolstering Trump with a flurry of military and trade commitments. What's the real strategy behind this move? Following Ukraine's dramatic spiderweb operation, NATO is on high alert. New defensive positions are forming, particularly on Sweden's Gotland Island, dubbed the unsinkable aircraft carrier. How will Putin respond? Amid escalating battles in Ukraine, a top Russian general was discovered making a covert trip to Pyongyang, a quiet mission, but one with potentially major consequences. South Korea has elected a new leader and a new vision. But will President Lee Jae-myung maintain balance between the U.S. and China, or will Seoul gradually drift toward Beijing? We'll dive deeper into today's analysis. Shares of leading steel manufacturers in South Korea and Vietnam, two of the largest metal exporters to the U.S., began to plummet earlier this week following President Donald Trump's announcement that steel and aluminum import tariffs would be doubled to 50%. The decision, unveiled on May 30th and set to take effect on June 4th, has escalated tensions in the global trade war, coming just after Trump accused China of violating a joint agreement on tariff removal and the regulation of strategic mineral exports.
Experts in the steel industry believe that although the tariff hike will cause significant disruption for major exporters to the U.S., the actual rate may be revised downward due to possible adjustments in the Trump administration's trade policies. Chelsea Yee, a senior analyst at metal research firm McCloskey, commented, "The constant shifts in the Trump administration's tariff policies create major uncertainty about the real impact. I think the final outcome will be much lower than initially projected, especially in terms of the duration." Meanwhile, South Korea's Ministry of Industry stated it would address the 50% steel tariff during trade negotiations with Washington, aiming to mitigate the negative impact on the domestic industry.
Now to the political heat in the United States. Billionaire Elon Musk has openly slammed the Republican Party for passing President Donald Trump's big and beautiful budget bill in the House of Representatives. Musk is calling on voters to remove every lawmaker who supported the bill in the upcoming November election next year. His statement came just days after stepping down from his advisory role in the Trump administration, following a reportedly cordial farewell meeting in the Oval Office.
When criticizing the budget bill on Tuesday, Elon Musk shared a post from an X user attacking the Republican Party, along with his own comment, "Next November, Let's fire every politician who betrayed the American people. The shocking call from the Tesla billionaire was aimed at the entire Republican-controlled House of Representatives, with the exception of just two congressmen, Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Warren Davidson of Ohio. Earlier that same day, Musk had labeled the budget bill a disgraceful abomination. "I'm sorry, but I can't take it anymore," Musk wrote. "This massive, outrageous congressional spending bill stuffed with pork is an abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know it's wrong. You know it." Congressman Thomas Massie had strongly opposed the bill before it passed the House in mid-May, arguing that it maintained spending levels set during the Pelosi-Biden era and cut taxes while increasing the federal deficit. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a fellow libertarian like Massie, also posted on X Tuesday, "I want to see tax cuts made permanent, but I also want to eliminate the $5 trillion in new debt from this bill. At least 4 of us in the Senate feel the same." Musk reposted Paul's statement and replied, "Thank you." In recent weeks, both Paul and Massie have become targets of Trump's criticism after publicly refusing to support his ambitious domestic agenda, which includes both tax cuts and major spending increases.
This is not the end of Doge, but really...
Amid ongoing attacks by Trump and the White House over former President Joe Biden's alleged cognitive decline, a striking counterclaim has now surfaced, targeting President Trump himself. A Republican political strategist has suggested that President Donald Trump may be unable to complete his term due to potential cognitive issues. In an interview with Times Radio, Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project Political Action Committee, claimed that Trump is exhibiting signs far more severe than mere age-related confusion.
Rick Wilson stated, "Trump speaks in a fragmented way. He can't express a thought or viewpoint without constantly going off topic, being interrupted, or showing signs of language disruption at multiple points." He continued, "As someone who's observed Trump closely since 2015, I can say with certainty, the man you're seeing today is not the Trump of 2015, not even the Trump of 2020, and certainly not the Trump from early 2024. Wilson, a longtime political advisor, noted that communication difficulties are not uncommon among the elderly. He further claimed that concerns over Trump's cognitive health are shared by many experts, though lacking concrete evidence, who suspect he may be in the early stages of dementia, according to the Irish Star. He explained, "Many experts around the world are observing Trump's behavior and concluding, this is exactly what early-stage dementia often looks like. These are signs of cognitive decline." Just because he managed to circle the elephant on a memory test doesn't mean Donald Trump isn't suffering the effects of age and deteriorating health. Speculation over Trump's health has made headlines several times, especially after he experienced a noticeable weight loss earlier this year, prompting concerns about the cause. Notably, he is now the same age as Joe Biden was when Biden took office in early 2021. Adding to the controversy, a bombshell new book by journalist Jake Tapper has stirred further debate, claiming that Biden's health has declined since assuming the presidency. That narrative has cast doubt on reassurances about Trump's own condition. Despite his receiving a clean bill of health from his physician in April, Trump's personal doctor, Captain Sean Barbarella, issued a statement in response, declaring, "President Trump is currently in excellent health. His cardiovascular, pulmonary, neurological systems, and overall physical condition are all highly stable. President Trump possesses outstanding physical and mental fitness, fully capable of fulfilling the duties of Commander-in-Chief and Head of State."
Turning to the U.S.-Europe relations, As transatlantic ties face increasing strain, U.S. President Donald Trump has scored a strategic boost with the election victory of nationalist candidate Karol Nawrocki in Poland's presidential race. However, while this win is seen as a political gain for Trump, it has sparked deep concern among European policymakers.
With his staunchly conservative stance and backing from the far right, Karol Nawrocki is being hailed as a spiritual ally of President Donald Trump in Europe, a leader poised to paralyze the EU-friendly government of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, halt democratic reforms, and steer Poland toward open confrontation with the European Union. According to Reuters, Nawrocki, a conservative historian, amateur boxer, and candidate endorsed by the Law and Justice Party, PIS, is being described as Poland's Trump. He declared the election a referendum to remove the Tusk government and now holds veto power capable of blocking any liberal reform agenda. Immediately after his victory, the Polish stock market dropped over 2%, and the zloty weakened. Investors are concerned that the new president may obstruct government efforts to reverse PIS-era judicial reforms and legalize abortion rights, contentious issues that previously led the EU to sue Poland in court. The far right across Europe welcomed the win. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban called it a wonderful victory. Former Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš, a populist currently leading polls ahead of the October election, also extended warm congratulations. However, a policy expert at the Battery Foundation warned, Trump will now have a stronger voice in Polish politics.
On the financial front, President Trump faces another mounting challenge. Trade tensions between the U.S. and China continues to escalate after Beijing's Ministry of Commerce accused Washington of seriously violating the agreement reached during last month's trade talks in Geneva. The Chinese government has also warned of strong retaliatory measures to defend its national interests.
According to a statement published by Chinese state media, Beijing insists it is seriously implementing the terms agreed upon at the Geneva talks. However, it accuses Washington of repeatedly undermining trust and threatening the negotiation process, including actions such as revoking Chinese student visas and imposing new export controls on advanced technology. China's Ministry of Commerce emphasized, the United States is unilaterally initiating new economic and trade tensions, increasing instability and uncertainty in bilateral relations. If the U.S. continues to harm China's interests, we will take resolute actions to safeguard our legitimate rights. The statement from Beijing came shortly after U.S. President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, declaring, China has completely violated the Geneva Agreement, and I'm done playing nice.
It is worth noting that last month's U.S.-China meeting in Geneva had somewhat eased tensions as both sides agreed to reduce tariffs on certain imported goods. That agreement sparked hopes of a follow-up phone call or even a possible face-to-face meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. At a June 3 press briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that a phone call between the two leaders is likely to take place later this week. A Kremlin-aligned newspaper has cited Ukraine's recent drone strikes on air bases deep inside Russian territory as justification for Moscow to consider a nuclear response. This comes amid intense speculation over Russia's next move following Ukraine's spiderweb operation, an assault some observers have linked to the shock of Pearl Harbor.
Comments from Russian political analyst Sergei Markov were published in Moskovsky Komsomolets, following revelations by Ukraine's security service, SBU, that its airstrike campaign had targeted 4 Russian air bases and destroyed 41 strategic bombers. inflicting an estimated $7 billion in damage. Although Markov's views do not represent the official position of the Kremlin, they highlight growing concern over how Moscow might respond. Especially as Russian and Ukrainian delegations met in Istanbul on June 2nd for peace talks, while the war launched by President Vladimir Putin rages on. Keir Giles, an expert at the Chatham House think tank, noted, "We're going to hear more and more angry voices coming out of Moscow."
Pro-Russian telegram channels have compared Ukraine's bold June 1st drone assault to the surprise air raid on Pearl Harbor by Imperial Japan on December 7, 1941. Max Boot, a columnist for The Washington Post, echoed that comparison in an op-ed, writing that Russia's top commanders must have been as stunned as the Americans were in 1941. Pro-Russian military bloggers and some officials have criticized the Kremlin for failing to protect remote military infrastructure, such as the Icarus base in Siberia, which was hit in the strike. The attack also risks escalating the conflict just as a new round of peace talks begins.
Keir Giles, of the Russia-Eurasia program at Chatham House, stated that following these attacks, Russia is likely to continue issuing warnings about the risk of uncontrolled escalation as a way to send a deterrent message to the West. The Kremlin will seek to create the impression that its nuclear forces are always on standby, and that any further military success by Ukraine could push the situation toward full-scale war with NATO. Moscow will also attempt to pressure Washington to rein in Kyiv, aiming to prevent Ukraine from inflicting damage on the long-range missile platforms that Russia is using to strike Ukrainian cities.
Meanwhile, Russia's National Security Council Chairman Sergei Shoigu has reportedly made a secret trip to North Korea at the direction of President Vladimir Putin. His mission to request assistance in counterintelligence operations and in dealing with Ukrainian agents operating inside Russian territory. Shoigu is expected to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during the visit.
According to a press statement from the Russian Security Council's press office, upcoming talks between Russia and North Korea will include discussions on implementing key points of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty between the Russian Federation and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK. The agenda also includes commemorating North Korean soldiers who aided in the liberation of Russia's Kursk region. Broader international issues, including the ongoing situation in Ukraine, are also expected to be discussed. This marks Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu's second visit to Pyongyang in recent months. His previous trip took place in March this year. Shoigu noted that the scale of bilateral engagements between Russia and North Korea in 2025 will be no less extensive than in 2024. The year the Strategic Partnership Treaty was signed, he emphasized that relations between Moscow and Pyongyang are developing vigorously. At a recent international security summit held in Moscow at the end of May, Shoigu expressed gratitude to the North Korean military, saying they had fought to liberate our land as if it were their own. He underscored the historic contribution of North Korean troops to the battle for Kursk. On April 26th, Russia's chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, submitted a report to President Vladimir Putin, praising the DPRK's assistance in defeating Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region. President Putin publicly thanked the units of the Korean People's Army for helping repel Ukrainian militants along Russia's border, and stated that they fulfilled their duties with honor and courage, deserving of eternal glory. Putin also extended his heartfelt appreciation to DPRK's State Affairs Commission Chairman, Kim Jong-un, as well as the North Korean leadership and people. He added that the Russian people will never forget the heroic deeds of the Korean soldiers.
As the Russia-Ukraine war takes a dramatic turn following a historic operation by Ukrainian security forces, Europe's efforts to brace for a potential large-scale conflict with Moscow have entered a new phase. Now, with President Vladimir Putin reportedly planning a furious retaliation, European leaders and military commanders are scrambling to ensure their forces are fully prepared to confront any threat from Moscow. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has just declared that Britain will move into a combat-ready posture, pledging to build 12 new nuclear submarines and at least 6 ammunition plants under the government's new national defense strategy.
In Germany, Chancellor Friedrich Merz confirmed last week that Berlin will fund long-range missile production in Ukraine, following the approval of a €500 billion defense and infrastructure spending package. However, the most striking example of Europe's rearmament efforts is unfolding on Gotland, a 1,000 square mile Swedish island in the Baltic Sea, once known for its tourism, now rapidly transforming into a military fortress and NATO strategic outpost. During a visit to Gotland late last month, General Carl Johan Edström, Chief of Staff and Deputy Supreme Commander of the Swedish Armed Forces, told Mail Online of plans to turn the island into a future NATO hub and first line of defense against Russian aggression. He warned that the transatlantic alliance must not take its eyes off Russia for the next 15 years, adding that Gotland must be prepared to absorb a Russian strike and keep fighting. Gotland's strategic position is critical, just 120 miles from NATO members Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and around 230 miles from Russia's heavily militarized Kaliningrad exclave. With Sweden now officially a member of NATO, Gotland offers an ideal base for Allied surveillance and deterrence of Russian naval and air forces in the Baltic Sea. It also serves as a potential launch point for NATO air support and strikes on Russian-held positions should war erupt.
Turning now to the latest political shift in Asia, liberal-leaning lawyer Lee Jae-myung has been elected president of South Korea on June 3rd, bringing an end to months of political instability in the key U.S. ally, a crisis sparked by a controversial martial law declaration. Lee Jae-myung, leader of the Democratic Party, was sworn in on June 4th. His conservative rival Kim Moon-soo of the People's Powers Party humbly conceded, stating he respects the people's choice.
According to the National Election Commission, Lee Jae-myung secured 49.4% of the vote, while conservative rival Kim Moon-soo garnered just over 41%. A third conservative candidate, Lee Jin-sok of the fledgling Reform Party, captured 8.3%. Speaking before his victory was officially confirmed, 61-year-old Lee told Parliament that the election was a strong rebuke of last year's martial law declaration and a clear assertion that all presidential power derives from the people. He declared that his supporters had proven through their votes and their sovereignty that we are the true masters of this country. The election came exactly 6 months after then-President Yoon Suk-yeol shocked South Korea's 50 million citizens by abruptly declaring martial law, citing threats from anti-state forces and accusing the opposition-controlled parliament of paralyzing the government. Under Lee's leadership, lawmakers impeached Yoon on December 14th for his short-lived martial law order. Since then, the country had been governed by a rotating line of acting presidents, a power vacuum that hampered Seoul's negotiations with the Trump administration over the upcoming 25% reciprocal tariff and other U.S. trade measures. Lee, who narrowly lost to Yoon in 2022, had long been seen as the frontrunner after the Constitutional Court upheld Yoon's removal from office this April. However, analysts say voters were motivated more by anger toward Yoon than by enthusiasm for Lee. His victory wasn't policy-driven. It's the result of Yoon's spectacular downfall, said Leif Erik Easley, professor of international studies at Ewha Women's University. Lee's vow to prosecute those involved in the martial law order has raised concerns about potential prolonged political instability. Yoon is currently on trial for insurrection, a charge that could carry the death penalty or life imprisonment. In remarks this week, Lee said his top priority, beyond addressing economic challenges and domestic division, was securing a trade agreement with the United States. In addition to the 25% tariff set to take effect on July 9th, South Korea's export-reliant economy remains vulnerable to other U.S. sector-specific tariffs on key products like steel and automobiles. When asked about President Donald Trump's hardline negotiation tactics, Lee responded, "That's the kind of political conduct we should expect from a global power, and we must endure it. If the president of South Korea has to bow his head for a moment to secure prosperity for 52 million people, then he should do it." While acknowledging Trump's formidable presence, Lee insisted diplomacy must be mutually beneficial and reminded Washington that South Korea is not a nation easily pushed around.
And that's all for the world this morning. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.